very pleased to see we are a big team today, around 81 people. That's really motivating and interesting. So as we have a very short time, we'll switch immediately to the presentation of the European market. I will now share my screen, or at least try to do it. Here. Please let me know if it works, if it is okay for you.
Okay, it's okay.
It's okay.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, 1 second also for me. All right. So we have 20 minutes today, which is short, to talk about European clothing market and the requirements of the market and of the buyers on this market. The first pictures you see is European as a global geographical entity with the share of clothing buying by country. As you can see, of course, all European countries are buying. But if I put in the title, if I use the name European and not European unions, is because there is, as you know well, a difference between the European countries in general and as a global geographical entity and the European unions. Still, you can see here the main country who are buying clothing in the EU and in the Europe, and we'll come back more in details on this. This is the Europeans as a geographical entity, and this is European unions. There is 27 members now after England left the unions 2 years ago. There is 27 members in the European unions, but in this presentation, we will still consider England as it is a very important buyers of fashion apparel in Europe. Europe in a geographical sense and not political sense. So as you can see, very few countries are not member of the EU, but England is a very important clothing buyers. Switzerland also is a small country, but important clothing buyers. And Norway in the north of Europe is also a market which is not negligible in the European area. We'll cover 3 main topics in this presentation. First is an introduction to the European apparel market. Second, we'll see the key market trends which are important for you to know if you go to Germany, participate a fair or any other fair. And then we will see the requirements to enter, the main requirements to enter the European clothing market, and above all also the buyer's expectation. So the EU of the European clothing market is around 470 billion US dollar of retail sales. And this market is dominated by what we call the Big Five. The Big Five are the 5 countries which are listed here on this graphic. In blue, you have the German market, which is considered to be the biggest market in Europe, with approximately 18% of all clothing sales in Europe. The second market is UK, which is not anymore part of the EU, but still part of the European common market, if we can say, which is also a very big buyers, and sometimes it's even bigger than Germany. It can shift from one to another for the first place. Now buying around 17% of all, selling 17% of all clothes in Europe. Then you have France, Italy, Spain, which are a smaller market, but still very consequent, considering that in Europe in 2020, around 24 billion pieces of clothing have been sold in European market, sold and imported. So what is important to understand is that approximately half of the importation of clothes, of apparels made in Europe are from intra-European exchanges. Means that half of the garments sold in Europe are imported from one European countries to another. Italian producers selling to France, etc. The other half, the other 50%, are imported from outside Europe and especially from Asia. So it is in this perspective that Vietnam is coming. This is the top 10 EU importers of apparel in 2020. You have, of course, Germany. France is a big importer, Spain, Italy, Netherlands, and Poland. We'll come back to this country soon because they are the emerging, new buyers, new important buyers in Europe, beside the big five we just saw. Just to give you also a global visions of who are the top importers of textile and apparels in the world, you can see that EU is really #1 with approximately 20 and even more than 20% of textile import in the world, well below, before the USA, which represents something around 13%. And Vietnam is also a pretty big importer of textile, as 90% of your textile is imported, but EU is a big importer of textile. In terms of clothing, it's also a huge market, as you can see on international level. EU import more than 30% of all clothing in 2020. USA much less, so EU is really an important importing market, okay, for clothing. This graphic also gives you an idea of the share of textile and apparel imports between Europe, with Europe in general, which is in this pink colors, and for example, compared with USA, you see that the share of global European buying is much more important than United States, for example, or even Asia. Okay, in terms of imports, not talking in terms of sales, but in terms of imports. So it is definitely for you, Vietnamese manufacturer, it is a market with a very serious potential, one of the biggest import market in the world. Now that we have quickly introduced the European market and the Europe main buyers, we can see go through the main trends which are now pregnant on the European market. The most important trends which we can feel and which are important today in 2022 in Europe when you go for business. These trends can be divided, in geographical trends, product trends, buyers' attitude, which have been changing in the last few years, and the question of price. I'm still online.
You are, but there somebody else is having shared.
Can you share again, Denis?
I'm sorry.
You share again, please.
Yeah. 1 second. I cannot share. It's here, maybe. 1 second. Is it okay now?
Go down there again for screen sharing. Now
is it all right? No.
No.
I share my screen.
No, not yet.
Not yet?
No.
Can you share again? Because I stopped the one who is sharing. Các anh chị ơi, nếu các anh chị chú ý nhá.
No, now they are. This is back again. Now
Is
it's
it
back.
okay now?
Now it's okay. Now it's coming. Yes. Now you're.
I'm very sorry.
Now
about
it's
that,
okay.
but I don't know what happened. Okay, so the trends are basically geographical trends, product-related trends, buyers' attitude trends, and the question of price issue. Okay. In terms of geographical trends, the idea is to identify potentially attractive new, not really new, but potentially attractive players in the European fashion market. There is a very important point to consider when you go in Europe for a business is the demographical issue, a demographical question. For example, here there is a map showing the median age, average age by European countries. You have countries which are becoming really populated by mostly aged people like Italy and Germany. And you have countries which are still have a quite important proportion of young people. Poland, for example, is one of these countries which are growing fast in terms of buying capacity for fashion. Poland, but also Republic Czech and Hungary and Romania. These countries are, as you can see, in the eastern part of Europe, and they are really growing market. They are growing because the young population is still really important in comparison with older countries like Germany or Italy. You can see also here that the spending by individual people in each country is different. Spending annually in terms of fashion spending, it can vary a lot from one country to another. The ones spending more money for clothing are the British, UK. They spend a lot, as you can see, around 1,200 euro a year. In comparison, Poland, which is still growing, but spend 3 times less, 400 euro per year per person in clothing. France is another rate. Germany is spending quite a lot, and etc. You can see here all the details. So you have these trends, geographical trends with emerging, if we can call this like emerging, but countries who are really growing. This is one of the trends you can take into consideration if you approach the EU market, the European market. The second trend concerns the products. You have here details of what are the products selling most in Europe. The biggest product sold in Europe are pants. Pants is the biggest product segment, okay? Women clothing is also more important than men. 55% of clothing sales in Europe are women's products. Out of these pants, half of them are denim pants. Europe is importing approximately 7.5 billion of denim pants every year. So this is an important market. But of course, this is important to understand that the situation is very different from one country to another, okay? In Germany, they buy different pants and different style of pants than in other countries, okay?
Denis,
So you have details here that you can come back later.
Denis, the
Yes?
screen is stopped. You have stopped screen sharing, it seems.
Oh, no, I did not do anything.
I don't know why it's happened.
Okay, let's try again. I'm very sorry.
Yes, it's coming back.
I'm very sorry. I don't know what this happens. Dress and skirts are also a fast growing rate, even if they are sold less than pants, but it's two important items. we believe that swimwear and athleisure offer very good prospect for Vietnam, especially the very heavy and sophisticated outdoor jackets, which are used for outdoor activities. We have seen this is a very kind of specialty in Vietnam and can be a very interesting market for Vietnamese in Europe. Knitwear is also an important, very important market in CAT 61, important market in Europe. Vietnam is the position 8 in importers of exporter of knitwear in Europe. We believe that they could improve that positions and tap on this potential of knit market, which is, as you can see here in this table, important. All this information will be available for you later for the people who wants to get access to the presentation. We cannot spend too much time on all this, okay? So now you have the trends, market trends, and which are very important. And I'm sure Brigitte will come back on these issues. 4 trends are really critical these days and shape the expectation of European buyers. These are sustainability, flexibility, transparency, and responsibility. I still put in the middle of all this the price issue, because buyers never lose sight of the price. Price remains a central issue, even if all this issue around sustainability, flexibility, transparency, and responsibility are important. Price remains the central issue. Okay, so sustainability is everywhere. I'm not going to develop this too much, but there is no, since the COVID, even more, a very strong sensitivity on sustainability issue. There was one question from IDCS about the technological dimension of sustainability. So definitely, yes, there is a lot of technological innovation in Europe going in the direction of more sustainable product. I give you here a few examples of companies in France, in Italy, everywhere, who are every day working on technological development to improve clothing product sustainability. You can come back on these companies and example later. There is also in the sustainable issue a legal dimension, okay? European unions, this time I'm talking the political European unions, is really keen to, in the next few years, to improve its legal framework to tackle sustainability, sustainable issue. Some law will come in the next few years to reinforce the sustainability of products which are imported to Europe. For example, the EU Commission is calling for the end of fast fashion in Europe by 2030. Means in 8 years, product issue from the fast fashion, which has a lot of critics in terms of sustainability, should be almost prohibited to import in Europe. So this is really important to follow the evolution of the European Union's and European Commission legal framework in terms of import of garments, because it's going to evolve in the next 5-10 years. Okay. Then the other issue, which are the flexibility, transparency, and corporate social responsibility, are introduced here. Basically, what is important to remember is that the buyers increasingly and the final consumer increasingly wants to know where their products are coming from, and if these products they are buying from you, from the manufacturer, whatever it is in Vietnam or other place, are produced in good conditions in terms of social and environmental ethical conditions. That means the working condition in the factory should be correct, and the environmental treatment of the factory, of his waste, of his water wasted, fire security, all these elements participate to the transparency. Buyers want to know precisely to whom they are buying and the ethical content of their product, okay? You have here two definitions of corporate social responsibility. Again, it's a question of propose to the workers within the factory a correct and acceptable working and social conditions, and to respect and to take care of environmental issue within and around the factories, to minimize the impact of the production on the environment. All these issues are absolutely central, and when you will meet buyers in the fair, whatever it is in Munich or any other fair, you have to show them that you have integrated this key issue and that you have done something, or that you have planned to do something about this in your own factories, okay? This is a marketing tool. You have to communicate on this issue with the buyers to convince them that you are a responsible producer of clothing in Vietnam. This is absolutely critical. The price issue is very important, okay? You know very well that these days there is a price increase in almost everything, but especially for us in textile, in raw material like cotton, in freight rate, in oil, in everything, the price is going up. The COVID and now the war in Ukraine, in Europe, are pushing the inflation up and is creating more pressure on the buyers to absorb this rise in prices. So the price issue is going to be more complex in the years to come, or at least in the 2 years to come. And this is really important now for you, if you arrive on the European market, to be very clear on your price issue and to be able to negotiate with the buyers the price issue, because you will not be able, nobody will be able to absorb alone this price increase. It will be a negotiation between buyers and consumer, because the end consumer will have to pay more, and manufacturers, to balance and to see who is going to absorb the price increase, because this has to be absorbed anyway. We have no choice. And it is important to involve the buyer in your price negotiation much more than before, okay? So price issue is still very, very important. There was a question also regarding price and sourcing strategy, okay? Vietnam is importing for the moment almost 90% of this fabric from outside countries. What is the strategy we believe could work? So I think you know better than us, but basically the first logical thing will be to favor local suppliers. But of course, local suppliers do not offer all types of fabrics. So if you work with third-party suppliers, you should choose suppliers who are close to Vietnam, as close as possible, to limit the logistic-related costs, because we know that these costs are also increasing a lot. Freight costs and transportation costs are high. So try to work with suppliers of fabric which are as close as possible to Vietnam, and also with countries which can give Vietnamese exporter the benefit from the tariff exemption granted under the European Vietnam free trade agreements. I think a colleague of us from GIZ will talk about this EV FTA agreement and the regulations and the system which permit to avoid the tariff exemption, the tariff. So you really have to take into consideration these rules, what we call rules of origins in this EV-FTA trade agreement, because it is really important. So it's a bit complicated, sorry, it's a bit complicated, but you have here links which give you some information and guidance on the rules of origins in the framework of this EV-FTA agreement. And also you can ask your buyers to help you on this level. Now we come to the last part of this presentation, which are the requirements to enter the European clothing market. There are three types of requirements: the legal requirements, which are mandatory and which comes from the European Union's laws. You have non-legal requirements, but which are also in a way mandatory because they are the buyer's own requirements. And finally, these buyer's requirements are connected to some indirect requirements, which are the standard, which are used by most of the European buyers. The legal requirements, I want you to remember, are the two most important in Europe, are these two. They are fundamental. The first one is the prohibition by law in Europe of certain chemical substance which must not be present absolutely on the exported garments, okay? Some chemicals are absolutely prohibited, and you should make sure that when you export garments to EU, these chemicals are not present on the product. The second compelling and mandatory requirement concerns the labeling, okay? This is the two key legal requirements. Let's talk about this REACH compliance. So REACH is an organization within the European Union's, an institution which control and organize the contents in harmful chemicals of the product imported in Europe. It's a pretty complicated process, so I will not go in detail now. We have no time for this. But the thing you have to remember is you will have to collaborate with your buyers to make sure that your products do not contain these chemicals, and you will be responsible to deliver your buyers products which are, if I can say, clean. So you are responsible to control also your suppliers of fabric, your supplier of accessory. You have also to control them when you deal with this REACH regulation. Okay, you can get information about this subject on these different links I have indicated here, specifically in this ZDHE Foundation, which brings a lot of help for the suppliers in order to analyze these manufacturing restricted substance which should not be implemented and part of the product. But this also, your buyers will help you in this direction. But also here you have some help you can consult. For the labeling, it is also a mandatory requirement for EU. You can connect to the link here I have indicated, but it is more simple than the REACH regulation. You have some compulsory requirements to labeling. You have to indicate the composition, precise composition of the garments. You have to indicate exactly if there is some animal parts in the garment. This kind of details you can find by going on the links here. Also, in this case, the buyers will help you. These are the two main mandatory requirements with the legal obligations. Now you have non-legal mandatory requirements, which are the buyer's expectations. Your buyers, as a precondition for doing business with you, will ask you to meet certain requirements in terms of sustainability, again, social and environmental requirements, and ethical issues. And of course, I did not mention it here, quality of the product, but this I don't need to mention. It's obvious that the product has to be of quality. So this requirement the buyer will ask you to fulfill can be presented in both two types of documents. Buyers may have internal code of conducts, means they have their own internal in-house specifications. I gave two examples here of a code of conduct, and one example of code of conduct for a company. You can go and see later. And they can also, the buyers, relay on external standard and certification. There are a lot of standards in the world. You know many of them already. Probably many of you have already participated in certification for some of these standards. I have listed here the most important one in terms of social compliance. You have BSCI, you have the SA 8000, you have WRAP, you have the Fairware certification. All this you probably know well, but the European buyers are using a lot BSCI, the second one. They are also using sometimes the RAP, the SA 8000, but the mostly widespread use is BSC for social compliance. In terms of environmental certification, you have also a lot of standards, but European buyers are using a lot the Ecotex for the textile. They use Blue Sign, they use BCI, the Better Cotton Initiative. Okay, so this conclude in 20 minutes. It was very short. I'm very sorry. We cannot go more in detail in the given time. This was a very fast introduction to the European market, to the European expectations and mandatory obligation you will have to fulfill if you want to deal with European buyers. If you want more details, I'm sure SIPPO Vietnam will make this presentation available for you, so you can go and see the hyperlinks and the links which are in the presentation. I thank you very much for your attention and for your patience. And if you have any questions, let's see with Lynn when we answer to the questions. Thank you very much to all of you for your attention. No, I want to stop.